This is Business Talk, and I'm Norman Liss. I invite you to join me as we find out what we can do to help businesses do business better. The subject of today's program is people performance management, and we have a man who is really quite qualified to do that. He's Bruce Bolger. He's the former editor and publisher of Incentive Magazine. He has a company today which is called Selling Communications Group. And Bruce, I'm so glad that you can discuss with us today this very, very important factor of how do we handle the performance and improve the performance of people, including our own. So what is the key factor in getting good performance?
Well, the key is to create a sense of ownership. People who really feel that they buy into your company's mission, be they customers, be they salespeople, be they employees, be even the people who mop the floors, you can get incremental performance gains if those people are on board.
Well, yeah, that's a great big slice to take off in one bite. How do you do that? How do you make someone who's an employee or a customer a feeling of owning your company?
Well, I hate to use a basketball or a sports analogy, but I hate to say it. It is true that many businesses, to me, are run like a basketball team where every player is playing his or her own game and could care less about the audience. And to me, the success is that to have all of those players that are involved in making your business work playing toward the same goal. And the way that begins is by top management, understanding clearly what its goals and opportunities are, and then believing in their hearts of hearts that it's the team, that it's all the people that can make that goal, in a sense, come true.
You say top management. Now, the things that we're talking about today apply to large companies as well as to small companies, don't they? It even applies to a person who is a sole business, doing business out of his or her home, doesn't it?
Even the person who sells hot dogs on the corner depends upon customers and also, of course, his or her relationship with their vendors, the people who supply them with their products. The better the relationship they have with their customers, the more loyalty they'll have, the more often the customer will come back, and the more often the customer will say to somebody else, hey, Harry down by 44th Street has got a really good hot dog. And secondly, if he has a good relationship with his vendor, maybe if he's in a cash squeeze or sometime he might need a little help, the vendors will help him out, or maybe the vendors will give him special offers or special deals because he's built a good relationship.
Maybe we ought to define what people performance is. Exactly what is it by your definition?
People performance management is basically a fancy way of saying that a critical success factor for companies is having all of their people aligned under the same goals. And all of their people meaning, of course, their employees, of course, their customers, but also the middlemen, the distributors and the retailers that might be representing us to that customer, and also our vendors, the people who do business with us. And that companies, I believe, have really neglected a very strategic way to improve their performance when the product is good, when their financial situation is good, when market conditions are good. They still overlook this fundamental need to have alignment of all of your people working toward the same thing.
You know, that reminds me of an experience you were telling me about at a restaurant where someone at a restaurant really ruined business for the company. Why don't you just go into the details of that? And maybe it gives an example of what poor people performance is.
Well, obviously, very coincidentally, I have been saying and believe fervently that it's our least paid, least motivated, least trained employees in whose hands we usually, most of us, put our customers. And this was proven in a recent case of a local restaurant here where the people who were actually dealing with the customers were completely obnoxious and insulted them, said horrible things. And, of course, the customers started speaking amongst themselves, saying how horrible this was. And I thought of the poor owner of this restaurant who probably runs ads and spends probably tens of thousands of dollars to market his services, and some low-paid, unmotivated employees have actually come in and thwarted and wasted all of his investment, or her investment. So it's
the line you told me about was supposedly the manager at the front desk said, "I have a college education and I only do this part-time and I don't need you," which...
I don't need you. Of course, the owner might have a different view of that, but this happens every day. This happens in major corporations. This happens in small printing companies where the manager or the owner fervently believes that his or her competitive edge is by giving good service, but then nothing is done really other than meetings and platitudes to make sure that all the employees deliver that.
So let's explore the process now. How does one in business get peak performance from everybody who's involved in making that business successful?
Well, I think it's too easy to say how does one get peak performance. I think the goal is to improve performance. To get people on the same wavelength is not going to be a perfect science, just like you can't come up with a perfect advertisement and have every customer flock out and buy your product. But it is a process that you look for continuous improvement over time. And so basically it's first understanding what your company's opportunities and objectives are, specifically what things, and this applies again to a very small company as well as a large, what things, if you do more of, if your company does better, will give you greater market share, will give you greater customer satisfaction and customer loyalty or new customers. So you have to identify those things first.
You know, you're saying to outline this, when people make a business plan, which seems to be something that most businesses do they ever make a business plan that talks about the performance of people?
You see it a lot in annual reports today, and you see it a lot in advertising. You'll see major airlines and other companies flaunting their employees, having them smiling and saying, "We own the airline," or "We own the company, and we're going to make you happy." The trouble with all of that is that it's generally a platitude. It's something comes up with by the marketing department because they believe that's what the customer wants, and I think they're right. The customer does want it. But once again, it's a situation where companies are creating an expectation, and they're not really making sure that they delivered. I'd like to know what these companies that tout the great service that you're going to get actually do to make sure that the employees have even seen the ad before it runs, let alone are actually buying into that theme.
So what you're saying, Bruce, is that people should lay out a plan and say, this is my objective, this is what I want to accomplish as far as the people who work for me, as well as myself, and the people who represent my company, even if they are not employees, and lay out this plan and start with that point.
Right.
And from there?
And from there, you have to do an assessment. Then you have to plot yourself along that. Where are you? And where are you with the various people? If you've decided that your product or service has a unique selling proposition, find out whether your customers even are aware of what you think that unique selling proposition is. And by your customers, I also mean the people who take your product to market. You might sell through retailers, you might sell through distributors, or independent salespeople. So you have to involve all of these people in the process of assessing your situation. Where are you today in terms of having people perceive that that's what you're good at doing? Then you have to look at your own employees. If you're making a promise to the customer, you really have to assess how well am I delivering that promise today? How consistently is that service standard being adhered to? And so you have to see and then look and see, even with your vendors, how well they understand. And you'll usually find they don't understand at all, because very few people ever involve their vendors, except in the manufacturing world where it's actually done all the time. But in any case, so you have to go through an assessment phase.
Point. Someone once said to me, when I talk to my vendors, I tell them that they are as important to me as I am to them.
That's right.
So that it becomes a mutual relationship, and their joint success is dependent upon both of them succeeding and not one catering to the other one.
Exactly. And there's all sorts of reasons why, again, if you have good relationships with all of the people in your business, you can obviously get more out of them. They will want to do more, but it can only be done with sincerity or it fails.
And how do you train people to do this, employees or non-employees? How do you train people to be aware of their need to recognize all these qualities that have to be conveyed?
Well, fortunately, this is not a completely new science. In fact, the term people performance is new in the sense that it really says we have to take a strategic focus on people, and whatever, if we're dealing with total quality management, just-in-time manufacturing, or even an advertising campaign, we always should be looking at the people ramifications of that, because that, in a sense, is what the customer and everything is. We're all people, but to answer your question, I think I lost.
Yeah, well, the question is, how do we train our people? How do we get it going?
Well, the key is, as I said, is to involve people in the process. To get that sense of ownership, they have to be involved. So once your company is spelled out, in a sense, what you think your opportunities and objectives are, then there are ways to run, in a sense, focus groups with your own employees and your own customers to say, okay, this is our company's objectives. This is what we're trying to do. What recommendations would your group make?
Isn't that very time-consuming for a small company to lay out a plan like this? Is it something most small companies are working so hard that they don't have time for this luxury, if it is a luxury?
That's exactly why it's not done, Norman. That is exactly why companies do overlook it. Not only is it somewhat time-consuming, but it's emotionally exhausting. The most difficult part of running a business is managing people. And you'll often see with small businesses that the manager is so busy putting out fires, dealing with customers, dealing with emergencies, that they are neglecting the number one key. The manager in that restaurant we just spoke about, where was he today, or she today, or the owner of it, when this customer, when this low-level manager or whatever was turning off 5 or 6 people around him? And what was more important? Where should he or she have been today? And the premise of people performance management, yes, it is going to be somewhat time-consuming in the sense that if you're going to involve people, you must involve them sincerely and listen to them. You must implement, and there are, of course, many ways to do that, their recommendations. You must make these somewhat regular. They don't have to be every week, but they should be certainly every month, where people have a chance to get together and measure how they are doing against their goals and correct procedures and correct things that are not working. In this restaurant, we saw a system that had stopped them from serving us. We saw that the cashier could not accept our check. It had to be through the waitress. So at a meeting, an employee meeting, once a month, it might have come out that an altercation had occurred because of that policy, and shouldn't we change it? But we'll know that in that little restaurant, no one could care less. The employees will never suggest it to the manager, and that policy will continue to turn people off.
You know, it's interesting, in a similar type of restaurant, which works very efficiently, I have noted that there are 3 or 4 managers who are constantly on the floor, various levels of management, always looking, making sure that if a head goes up, that someone needs something, that someone is taking care of it. And of course, that's the difference. One works and the other doesn't work.
Well, you put your finger on it. It cannot, people performance management is not so much time consuming as it is something that we're not used to spending time doing. And we don't necessarily put that into our routine. But if one makes it part of one's way of managing, it not necessarily needs to get out of whack. But when you consider it important, when top management, the president, believes it, Tom Peters called it managing by wandering around, then it becomes infectious with the employees. When the hotel owner comes out in front of the hotel and sees a scrap of paper and bends down him or herself to pick it up, rather than asking the bellman to do it, it sends a message to the whole people, all the workers around there. And that is important, is using incentives as training. It's management by example.
It's an interesting point that, to me, one of the worst things that can be done, the first line of offense is what I call it, is the way the telephone is answered. And so many times someone will answer a telephone and say, hold on, and then go off because the operator is busy, and go off and do something else, and then come back having the person wait, or doing other things which are insulting and objectionable to the customer, potential customer. And all that has to be done really is for management to call in sometime, unannounced, and then very basically find out how the phone is answered.
Well, I think most companies, ironically, are much like a sieve, and customers just run out of them because of all these moments of truth that are ruined by, as I said, these employees who don't care and really have no reason to care. And for instance, if companies, top management, the president of American Airlines or a major airline realized what you realized, he would be spending a lot more of his time in the reservation center than flying around giving speeches and worrying about real estate. But the corporate priority is that somehow real estate and finance is more important than all those millions of moments of truth. When one lousy operator who doesn't care because she or he doesn't think that anybody else cares, turns off. One customer for an airline who refuses to fly that airline for 5 years can cost that airline $50,000 to $100,000. Think of the absurdity of all the millions they spend on advertising and how they routinely allow low-level employees to turn off a customer that could be worth, again, over a lifetime. There's one airline I won't fly anymore due to a series of major mishaps. It'll take them quite a while for me to go back. I'm sure that that airline is going to lose tens of thousands of dollars, and that's just a microcosm of what happens every day.
I just want to point out to our viewers that my guest today is Bruce Bolger, and the subject that we're discussing is the management of people performance management. Bruce, could we give some specific steps of what people can do, a retail store or a service business, to specifically find ways to improve the performance of individuals?
Yeah, I'll try. Obviously, it takes usually a little bit more than 3 sound bites to explain it, because like advertising or any other type of communications tool and management tool, it has a little bit of complexity to it, but it is quite simple. And again, it's understanding, number one, what you think your company, what your employees can do to improve your performance. If you need to be convinced it's worth your while, you may even want to step back and do an analysis. Figure out for yourself how much it would cost you if you could keep a customer versus losing a customer. That if you could theoretically increase by 10 or 15% customer retention, how much would it be worth to you to do that? And that's an important calculation to make, because that gives you a return on investment, a benefit. That's how you measure, in a sense, whether this is working. Will you keep a customer? So if you really don't believe what I'm saying, try that and do a ROI so that a year later you can see whether it's working. Then number 2, as I said, determine who in your organization can help you keep a customer, can help you achieve that goal, and involve those people in a process. And if you're a bigger company, you have a human resources person. If you're a small company, you do it yourself.
What do you mean by who? Who are the people who are in contact with your customers? Is that what you mean?
That's right. Well, if I'm in, if I'm in a restaurant and I own my own little restaurant, and I've determined that, it's going to be the waiters and the busboys and the chefs, everyone who's going to be a salesman for my organization. So if I've determined that the best way to keep a customer is to do this, and this, first is to get everybody together and to tell them that we have determined, and I would make it very clear to everybody, that these are the best ways for us to keep customers if we do this, and this. And I'd like you to all be quite aware of this, and to every day, those are your priorities. And if anything is stopping you from doing this, and this, I'd like you to speak up and let me know right away.
And using your example to convey to your waiters and your busboys that they're really in the commission business, and that their income is based upon how well they serve the customers, how the customer reacts to them, because their tips are really based upon how people feel about them.
That's right. And the thing I love about this concept of people performance management is that it's actually much easier for a small company to implement than it is a big, because a small company, one owner, one operating officer can really make a difference with 30 or 40 people. When you're dealing with 50,000 people, it's difficult for one individual to so quickly change a culture. But in a small company like a restaurant, the owner can be there demonstrating these principles every day. When something in the kitchen isn't being done in the way that everyone has agreed is necessary to make the customer happy, he can step in and say, hey, let me help you, let's do this right.
Now, in a retail store, the same thing holds true. I think of how many times I have been in a store and the person is waiting on me and the telephone rings. The telephone is answered. And I remember one specific instance where the telephone rang and the person didn't answer it. And I said, your phone is ringing. And he said, but you were here first.
Well, these are all moments of truth. And that if that was a computer store, this $2,000 sale might have been lost right then and there in that blink of an eye. And it's funny you should mention the retail arena. I think this is where, in service-intensive businesses, this is where it counts the most. And retailers routinely, again, are the worst offenders. They send the least paid, least motivated, least caring employees out right in front of the customer. And this, to me, was why many department stores ran into such a major problem, or one of the reasons, 10 years ago. And they fought back by reinstituting a focus on service, interestingly. But I know of a computer retailer, and this is how important I think people performance management is to financial success. I will make a prediction. I don't want to be sued, but I will predict that this major computer retailer, which is a hot stock right now, will fail, because their customer service is so horrendous that you go in there and you end up not wanting to buy, and you can just pick up a phone today or pick up a little publication called Computer Shopper and buy any computer you want from very helpful salespeople right over the phone. So my point is that people performance management, I believe, can be a critical success factor for a company. All else being equal, the company with committed employees will succeed against that which has uncommitted employees, and I don't think that is yet understood enough by the business community.
You know, I can think of an example of the past that relates to an example of today. In the days when banks had uniformed guards who really had no function but to be there in case of a problem and maybe to be a deterrent, the guard, I felt, was the most important public relations person in the bank because he had no other function except to stand there. And so he greeted people. People knew him. He didn't have any transactions to take care of. He was just there. And he was really the major image of the bank. Now, today, you see that in a different way. You have a large department store. You have security people at the doors to make sure that people aren't walking out with merchandise. Those people have nothing to do but to watch. But if they greet customers as they walk in and as they go out, it's a simple function if they're trained to do that, and they immediately establish an aura of friendliness. They have nothing else to do. They could be trained to do that. Some stores do that very well. Some of them are threatening.
The problem is that the bean counters don't have, there's not enough ammunition necessarily to convince the bean counters that there's an ROI on this type of management.
What is ROI?
A return on investment.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
But there is a professor at Harvard who's done a lot of work on this. His name is Leonard Schlesinger, and he has actually done research that tracks the relationship between employee satisfaction and customer satisfaction. And in other words, customer retention, which really is critical in business. Most companies focus on getting customers through marketing and advertising, direct marketing, and then leave the process of keeping customer to this sort of haphazard, disorganized, poorly managed effort. And there's an absurdity there that one has to wonder, how has it come to be that we have neglected such an obvious thing for so long, or we've skirted on the issue of it? There's all sorts of people that have talked about it, but no one seems to be taking the bull by the horns, or not no one, but too few people.
So what's the step-by-step? Okay, I have a small business, and so I want to set my goals. I want to inform my employees. Is there any help involved, or is there anything that I can read on this subject? Do I use outside consultants? What's the process of being aware and then taking the action and then making sure that the steps are followed?
Well, the neat thing is that, yes, there is a formal process, and one can hire outside consultants and whatnot to do it, but the neat thing about it is that a lot of it is good old plain common sense, and a lot of it really is successful small business people have been practicing this management philosophy instinctively for years, and many times as a matter of survival. They had to keep employees when there was a huge IBMs around. They had to do something special. They had to care more and listen better. And then they felt the effects of unhappy customers much more directly than the president of a huge car rental company does. So if you have it in your heart that you believe that your people will help you in every way achieve your goals to keep customers and get them to refer other people to you, and you believe in your heart of heart that every person in your organization is a salesperson, then I don't believe you need an outside consultant. It might be helpful if you're a bigger company to do it, but if you're a small company, there are a lot of books to read that do deal with, not directly with this issue, but with the issue of customer satisfaction, customer service. Just go to your local business bookstore, and they all talk a lot about people performance management without using that term. They talk about all the steps that are necessary to achieve service, and so really, if you're really committed and you believe it can help, you don't have to hire a consultant. To do some good reading on service and practice what you preach.
Now, you were the publisher and the editor of Incentive Magazine for many years. Are there incentives to give to employees to result in better performance?
Well, it's interesting, Norman. What led me to my current emphasis on this broader issue of people performance rather than just purely incentives is that what I learned when I was involved in the incentive business is that there are a lot of companies that do believe and realize that you have to motivate people to get things done. And traditionally they did this in the sales arena and in their distributor networks, where they offered a lot of incentives to their salespeople and distributors. And what I realized is that a lot more goes into motivating people than just incentives. Incentives, in a sense, are, as the people in New Orleans say, lagniappe, a little extra dash. They're a way of expressing thanks in a meaningful way. But training, if people can be as motivated as they want to be or as you want them to be, but if they don't understand your product and how to convey its benefits to the customer, the motivation won't help. So I believe in incentives, I believe in training, I believe that you have to involve people, and in continuous communication. People, has to be a great information flow within the company, like almost a little mini internet within each company. I tried this, it worked, or I have this problem, can you help? And have almost a club within your own company where people can help each other improve and share ideas quickly.
That's an interesting, not only to share with your employees and your staff, but I suppose it makes sense for some of the business organizations to address this subject and to talk about that at their meetings and their own symposiums, so that they can exchange things that work and things that don't work, explore bad experiences they've had and good experiences that they've had. It's a networking of a different sort, but it is a sharing, and of course that's very important, isn't it?
Yeah, that's been the foundation of business meetings and trade associations and whatnot for hundreds of years.
Do they discuss this subject, though?
The specific subject of people? I would say that it is still, in the human resources area, of course, is where you see it discussed the most, but it's not necessarily, it's not discussed with the terminology that I use, because human resources tends to just focus on your employees. People performance management is based on the premise that all of your people are linked and that your communications has to be integrated. What you advertise to the consumer has to be very systematic with what you're marketing to your own internal employees or what you're saying to your own employees. I've heard of major companies who launched an ad campaign promising great service and never bothered to tell the employees. And so to me, it's not just a human resources issue. Now, the marketing people are worrying about people, sales managers are worrying about people, but they're worrying about customers.
And of course there's one other key factor, and that is you've got to watch. You've got to constantly make sure that these policies, these principles, these directions are being followed, and either watch it at your level or at every level. You really have to get some sort of a feedback on it, otherwise it's useless.
That's right. It takes time, and for business executives to devote time to something, they have to be convinced of a return on investment. And I think that if companies really began to analyze the cost of losing customers, the cost of high employee turnover, if they really analyze the benefits of customer referrals, the benefits of happy customers, if someone could really put that into pure ink and really show them on a spreadsheet that benefit, and there are people who are trying and have tried to do that, we will see more emphasis placed in this area. But it, ironically, I believe, is one of the missing links in management today.
But you use the term ROI, and it really amounts to not some esoteric concept, but it really talks about getting a return on your investment. Because if you don't do it, then you are really hurting your business, because if the customer doesn't walk in or the client doesn't pick up the phone and call you, there's no business. And if the customer doesn't come back or the client doesn't come back, you're not getting a return on your investment. And that's really what it all amounts to.
This isn't just altruism. It is really a belief that capitalism works best. You will get a higher profit when the people that you're trying to be involved with are engaged.
And on that note, I must tell you that we have run out of time, and I thank you very much for being here today and exploring this subject. My guest today has been Bruce Bolger, and the subject has been really the important factor of managing people and getting the most out of them. The name of this program is Business Talk, and I'm Norman Liss. And until next time at this time, good luck.